Hey y'all. Today I am reading chapter 7 of It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And I intentionally wore my snowman fuzzy pajamas today because we have a snow day here in North Carolina. And I have been under the weather. You probably can hear it in my voice. I am on the mend, but I just decided to be comfortable today. Um, And we know that grief ain't pretty. So here we go with chapter 7. You can't solve grief, but you don't have to suffer. Living inside grief, you know there is nothing to be fixed. This can't be made right. While most grief support and well-meaning friends and family encourages you to move through the pain, that's simply the wrong approach. The way to live inside grief is not by removing pain, but by doing what we can to reduce suffering. Knowing the difference between pain and suffering can help you understand what things can be changed and what things simply need your love and attention. Being allowed to tend to your grief without feeling like you need to fix it or clean it up makes grief itself easier. Reducing suffering while honoring and supporting pain is the core of this book and the focus of this chapter. Here's a quote. This is the recurring theme. Quick, she's in pain. Let's talk her out of it. Let's tell her things will be better someday. Let's remind her to be grateful for what she had. Let's tell her how smart and funny and kind she is. And let's be sure because we know it's weighing her down to reassure her that and let's be sure because we know it's weighing her down to reassure her that someone other than the man she loves will eventually be beside her, snoring softly, waking up to kiss her good morning, rolling back over to have 5 more minutes while she gets up to walk the dog so he can sleep. Great, bring it on. Thanks so much for your kind words. You've really relieved my suffering with all this trying to talk me out of it. The people I love, the ones I will go to again and again, are the ones who do not in any way try to solve this for me, or fix it, or fix me. They do not make any attempt to cheer me up or shame me into feeling thankful that I had as much love as I did, and so should be happy with that. They do not tell me things will be better later, that I have so much to live for. They do not remind me I am part of the cycle of life as though that matters, all that pandering, condescending crap. That is an excerpt from Ask, Don't Tell, How to Help Someone in Grief on refugeingrief.com. What do I do now? The first weeks and months after an out-of-order death are a world unto themselves. At that initial time of impact, few things bring comfort. Things that brought comfort in the past become flimsy under the weight of this kind of grief. Words of intended comfort just grate. Encouragement is not helpful. Platitudes never help. Survival in early grief has a very small circumference. It's not an ordinary time, and ordinary rules do not apply. In grief, especially early grief, you have little energy to use any tools whatsoever. And tools used in the service of making things better often feel more offensive than helpful. Platitudes, self-help, well-meaning advice and suggestions, they're all about getting you out of your pain. Wherever we talk about how much we hurt, someone is right there to help make that pain go away. In this model, pain is a bad thing and it must be removed, but your pain is valid. It won't just go away. In his book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk writes that the body needs to express itself when exposed to stimuli. It has to. It needs to. When the body and mind experience pain, we have a biological need to express it. Pain that is not allowed to be spoken or expressed turns in on itself and creates more problems. Unacknowledged and unheard pain doesn't go away. One of the reasons our culture is so messed up around grief is that we've tried to erase pain before it's had its say. We've got an emotional backlog sitting in our hearts. You can't heal someone's pain by trying to take it away from them. You can't gloss over pain as though it were in the way of some better life. That grief is painful doesn't make it wrong. Pain is a normal and healthy response to loss. The way to survive grief is by allowing pain to exist, not in trying to cover it up or rush through it. Rather than erase pain, we might tend to it as though it were healthy and normal, in need of our kind, compassionate, simple honesty and care. We might instead companion ourselves inside pain, only in tending to it can we bear what is unbearable. Pain versus suffering. One gets tended, one gets fixed. And this is where we come up against our need to fix things, our need to take positive action on our own behalf. If we don't fix pain, if we don't solve grief, are we just doomed to relentless torture for the foreseeable future? For our purposes here, it's useful to separate pain and suffering. Pain is pure and needs support rather than solutions, but suffering is different. Suffering can be fixed, or at least significantly reduced. To differentiate the two, we need to define some terms. There are teachings on suffering in a lot of different traditions, both secular and religious. No discussion of pain and suffering, for me, can happen without at least a nod to Buddhism and its language of suffering. When we say that the Buddha taught all life is suffering and the way to escape suffering is to embrace impermanence, he wasn't saying, please pretend you see no suffering, please pretend you aren't in pain. He wasn't saying if you just let go of your attachments, nothing would hurt. He saw suffering, he saw pain. He wanted to find a way to stay present and to respond without flinching, without turning away from the abyss of pain present in the world. The Buddha saw pain. He asked, what can I do to not lose my mind and my heart here? How can I keep both eyes and heart open without being consumed by this? How can I keep my gaze steady on that which cannot be fixed? His response, in my mind anyway, was love. Love with open hands, with an open heart, knowing that what is given to you will die. It will change. Love anyway. You will witness incredible pain in this life. Love anyway. Find a way to live here beside that knowledge. Include that knowledge. Love through that. Be willing to not turn away from the pain of this world, pain in yourself or in others. The practices and tools we have from Buddhism and other traditions are meant to help you withstand the pain of life, to keep your eyes on the broken place without being consumed by it. They aren't meant, as pop psychology might have us believe, to remove all pain so that you can remain happy. They're meant to reduce suffering in the face of pain, not remove pain itself. Suffering and pain are not the same thing, and that distinction is the beginning of true healing and support inside your grief. As we've said, pain is a healthy, normal response when someone you love is torn from your life. It hurts, but that doesn't make pain wrong. Suffering comes when we feel dismissed or unsupported in our pain, and when we thrash around inside our pain, questioning our choices, our normalcy, our actions and reactions. Suffering comes with being told to not feel what you feel. Suffering comes with being told there is something wrong with what you feel. Suffering comes with all the crap that gets loaded on us by friends and colleagues and random strangers who, with the best of intentions, correct, judge, or give advice on how we need to grieve better. Suffering also comes when we don't eat, don't get enough sleep, spend too much time with toxic people, or pretend we're not in as much pain as we're in. Suffering comes when we rehash the events that led up to this death or this loss, punishing ourselves for not preventing it, not knowing more, not doing more. Suffering brings with it anxiety and fear and isolation. If we want to make this better for you, your suffering is where we need to look for change. The Great Grief Experiment. Once we've made the distinction between pain and suffering, we still need to answer the question of what we do about any of this. The broad answer is simple. Pain gets supported, suffering gets adjusted. There is no one way to do either of these things. Your grief is as individual as your love. Your way through this will be made by you in ways that are unique to your mind, your heart, and life. It helps if you think of it not as something you can do correctly or incorrectly, but instead as an ongoing experiment. No matter how many times pain or grief has entered your life, this time is the first time. This grief is unlike any other. Each new experience gets to unfold and be tended in the ways that best suit what hurts. You'll need to find out what those best ways are in order to withstand your loss. You'll need to identify what is pain and therefore needs support, and what is suffering and can therefore be changed. You'll need to ask yourself questions and experiment. This is not a test. You might hear that whatever has happened is a test, whether that's meant as a test of your faith or your practice or your emotional stability. I think that sets you up. A test implies that the universe is cruel, that you've been thrown into an impossibility and are being watched to see if you can figure it all out. Watch to see how much pain you're in and how you're handling it. Watch to see how well you address your own suffering. Watch to see if you can do this right. That's not a test. Your grief is not a test of love. It's an experiment in love. There's a huge difference between the two. Experimental faith, experimental relationship with yourself, with this life, with grief, with pain, with love, with suffering. It's all an experiment. It's not a test. You can't fail. You haven't failed. The point of any practice, the point of this experiment is to be the strongest, most whole vessel you can be, to hold what is, to live this life that's asked of you. Whether we're talking about pain or suffering, the underlying orientation is the same. Allow yourself to experiment, to find what helps, to find what makes things just a little easier. Not because doing so will make this okay, but because doing so makes this gentler on you. There is no one correct way to live this. Others have come before you and others will come after, but no one carries grief or love in the same way you do. Grief is as individual as love. There's nothing to do but experiment. It's all a work in progress. Gathering data. Experimenting in grief means looking for things that bring even the tiniest amount of relief or peace in your heart or your life. We're talking micro distinctions here. What gives you the strength or the courage or the ability to face the next minute, the next 5? Does it feel better to write out your pain, or does it make you feel worse? Are you more inclined to sleep through the night if you go for a walk or not? Honestly, thinking about my own grief, choosing experiments in those early days was not a conscious thing, but thinking of grief as an experiment helped me. It let me know that there was no right way or wrong way, even for me, even inside my grief. One of the first things you can do inside your grief is to start paying attention to subtle shifts in how you feel. There are times that tears leak out in inopportune moments, times when the screaming inside you can't be held in. When the screaming inside you can't be held in. Situations where holding yourself together is an entirely impossible task, and rabid mind loops keep replaying the events of your loss. These levee breaking moments don't just happen, they build. The effects of both pain and suffering are cumulative. While we might think that grief erupts without warning, there are always early warning signs. Gathering data helps you recognize those signs. The first concrete practice, then, is to start a log of what you notice. At first, this will be an exercise in deconstruction after the fact. If you take a recent experience of feeling completely overwhelmed in your grief, can you look back over the week before it happened and see signs that the load was getting too heavy? Where were the additional stressors? The things that eroded your capacity to find rest or stability? What were some smaller eruptions that happened leading up to the larger one? For me, an early warning sign was increased irritation with humans, animals, and inanimate objects. Simple things going wrong had a huge effect on me. As I got more overwhelmed, smaller and smaller things upset me. When I felt more stable, I had a much easier time brushing off swirling, annoying things. Using this example, irritation was a sign that I needed to step back from arbitrary stressors in my life. It meant I probably needed more sleep, more food, and less contact with humans. The more I noticed these smaller indicators, the better I was at caring for myself. I could see them as cues that needed to step back, cues that I needed to step back, make my world smaller and more care focused rather than push myself. If you think of your stability, your capacity to be present, this grief as a bank account, every interaction is a withdrawal. Every stressor is a withdrawal. Recognizing the signs that your account is getting low is one big way of preventing and soothing both meltdowns and grief overwhelm. Gathering data also helps you make micro comparisons to better and worse. Are there times you feel more stable, more grounded, more able to breathe inside your loss? Does anything, a person, a place, an activity, add to your energy bank account? Are there activities or interactions that make this feel just a little softer or gentler? What's going on before and during those times? Conversely, are there activities or environments that absolutely make things worse? What elements contribute to making things suck even more than they already do? Check in with yourself. Note how you feel at different times of day, under what circumstances. Map your social interactions. How much sleep have you had? What you're eating or not eating, and how you spend your time. You don't have to be obsessive about this. Broad sweeps can be as useful as minute detail. If you're unsure how to get started, you might ask yourself questions like, how do I feel after I see this person? Do I feel supported and centered or crazy and exhausted? Are there times of day I feel calmer and more grounded? Are there certain books or movies or places that take the sharp edge off my mind, if only for a little while? Your log might look something like this. Went to the grocery store. It was crowded. Saw so-and-so. Felt horrible. Overwhelmed. Too many memories in that place. Felt exposed, protective, defensive. Went to Ian's party. Was able to stay in the kitchen and do things to help. Felt okay. Felt good to be around people, but not with them. Talked with my mother-in-law. As long as we talked about logistics for the memorial, I felt supported. Talking about anything else just devolved into craziness. Note, avoid talking about feelings with her. Went to the beach this morning. Felt companioned by something, like the water could hold everything. Ate sugar cereal for breakfast and lunch. Felt like shit. Be sure to note what things gave you even the tiniest bit more peace of being or calm, especially in very early grief. Nothing is going to feel amazing. The weight of immovable pain is simply too much. However, there might be moments where you feel steadier, less anxious, or are able to be gentler with yourself. Remember that we're aiming to reduce suffering and find ways to tend to pain. If you find anything that feels less bad in early grief, or eventually even a little bit good, whenever that happens, pay attention to that. Gathering this data helps you figure out your own personal distinction between pain and suffering. Remember, suffering is arbitrary. Mapping those subtle distinctions of what helps and what doesn't is mapping your own suffering. It lets you know what can be changed or avoided. It lets you know where you do have some control in your grief. Whenever possible, choosing to avoid those things that don't help decreases your suffering, making you more available to tend to your own pain. There's a section here that says, try this, gather general data. For the next week, keep a log of how you feel throughout the day, under different circumstances, in various places, and in various social situations. What do you notice? Evidence. The outcome is more important than the action. How do you know when you're doing well versus really floundering or suffering in your grief? Because your metric can no longer be the cessation of pain, figuring out your relative wellness inside grief can be tricky. How do you know when you're emotionally stable, given the fact that you cry all the time? How can you tell if the pain you feel is because of the actual loss or because you're stuck in a loop of blaming yourself for everything? The data gathering you did in the last exercise assists you in recognizing your early warning signs and lets you see more clearly what helps and what doesn't. But in intense grief, it can be hard to actually tell the difference between doing well and making things worse. It can be hard to separate pain from suffering. In that case, it's helpful to look at the outcome of certain actions, identifying the signs of suffering and the signs of comparative calm. Even though every grief is unique, there are several broad indicators. Evidence of suffering: poor sleep, no appetite, excessive appetite, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, self-judgment, emotional reactivity. Reactivity is different from grief or pain. Short temper, sense of guilt disproportionate to actual responsibility, inability to breathe through intense emotion or to compartmentalize intensity enough to care for yourself, feeling victimized by your own pain or by the responses of others, a sense that your pain is too large to be contained or survived. Evidence of relative calm: emotional evenness, self-kindness, sense of being held or companioned inside your pain, validation, feeling somewhat rested, eating enough for your body's needs, feeling an acceptance of your emotional state, no matter what that state is, ability to respond to others' poor behavior with clear redirection or correction, taking things less personally ability to compartmentalize intense emotion or remove yourself from a situation in order to tend to that emotion, sense of connection to self, others, and those you've lost. Another try this section, noting the evidence. As part of your experiment in grief, it can be helpful to make a list of this for yourself. On one side of the page, make a list of signs you're really suffering. On the other side, a list of signs that you're caring for yourself well. What is evidence of suffering for you? For example, not sleeping well, feeling extra irritable, etc. What evidence shows that you're doing the best you can to tend to your pain? For example, feeling rested, able to more easily ignore or shrug off small annoyances, etc. Wellness versus worseness. One of the biggest causes of suffering and grief is the self-harm we do to ourselves with our thoughts. Did you just say, oh my God, yes. We'll talk more about specific mind-related challenges like anxiety, memory problems, and intrusive thoughts in other chapters. But now is a good time to bring up self-judgment, scrutiny, and blame. In times of stress, your mind can get really ravenous and start eating itself. I know mine does. Insightful, self-reflective people tend to be far harder on themselves than other folks. In this instance, a sharp mind is not necessarily your friend, especially in out of order or unusual death, but in many other losses as well. We rehash the events and our roles in them over and over. We process everything, every nuance, every word, every choice. I wrestle not only with what happened that day at the river, but also with the intractable mind loops I got into nearly every day around how well or not well I was doing, whether or not Matt would think I was doing this well or not, and how unfair it is that I felt I was being judged by his invisible ghost in my mind, giving what I had just gone through. The mind, not so much a happy place. It's true what they say in many spiritual traditions. The mind is the root of suffering. Even if some of your mind tells you, even if some of what your mind tells you is true, and 99.9% of it is not one bit true, there is no reason to increase your suffering with an unrelenting series of cruel and judgmental thoughts. Imaginary, unwinnable battles are not a kindness. So how do you sort the not useful thoughts from the useful thoughts? The language is a little clunky, but I think of this as a practice of discerning wellness thoughts versus worseness thoughts. Worseness thoughts take your pain and grind more stress into it, increasing your suffering. You're going to have your own particular way of mentally tormenting yourself, but it's really just a manufactured anxiety about what might happen in the future or stressing what happened in the past. What did I miss? What didn't I do? Why didn't I do something differently? How am I supposed to live with this now? Did I cause all this? Those are the kinds of questions that shut you down and shut you off. They're not useful. They create suffering. They make things worse. Wellness thoughts have the opposite effect. Your pain still exists, but your sense of calm or stillness are increased. Wellness thoughts are the stories, ideas, and inner images that bring you closer to yourself. They bring you just the tiniest sense of peace or rootedness, increasing your capacity to withstand the pain you're in. Here's another try this section, wellness versus worseness. Drawing from some of what you identified in the last two exercises, Create a side-by-side list of what makes you feel saner and what makes you feel crazy. What are the thoughts, ideas, or images that are on the worstness side of the equation? You can also add the activities from your earlier list, things like spending time with certain people, spending too much time online, eating poorly, basically anything that pulls you away from love, pulls you away from kindness to yourself, or makes you feel completely nuts. On the other side of the page, list wellness thoughts, ideas, images, and the activities that help you feel more rooted and calm. I'm not going to make any big guesses about what your list would look like. You know it when you feel these things. You know when you're in your own core. You know when things feel right in you. Write these things out during a time of relative calm or quiet. That way, when your pain gets too large, you'll have something solid to refer to for help. Rather than court more suffering, you can redirect your thoughts towards wellness and gentleness, or choose different actions from your list of things that don't make it worse. What things increase suffering, which allow you to hold your pain more gently. What difference does it make? The reason I have you spending time gathering data is so that you can identify the times your suffering increases and the times your suffering is more quiet or manageable. Differentiating pain from suffering helps you understand the connection between certain activities and their impact on your grief. Recognizing which thoughts make this easier and which thoughts make this worse lets you more easily redirect your mind away from arbitrary suffering. We can take the previous exercises, mapping your activities and interactions, evidence of suffering and tending this well, and wellness versus worseness, and create a compass of sorts, your guide to survival. Life coach Martha Beck calls this finding your own North Star. It's a way to both recognize your own evidence of suffering and give yourself a roadmap for how to decrease said suffering, especially when you're so lost in pain that you don't know what to do to help yourself. As a composite document, it's a way to recognize when your pain is getting too heavy, too hard to bear. Evidence of suffering is clear. It gives you a starting point of ideas for how to help yourself when your suffering is too much. Choose activities that have helped induce a state of relative calm in the recent past. Not sleeping well? Your data may show that reducing your sugar intake and staying off the computer late at night help you sleep a little better. Feeling consumed by rage and a sense of injustice? Your data might show you that your justifiable anger gets much larger when you've spent time with friends who judge or dismiss your grief. To soothe that torment, you might spend time in the natural, non-human world where you don't feel judged. You can choose to spend more time doing things that have even the slightest chance of inducing more calm or peace in you, and see how that goes. This is stupid. All this talk of gathering data and creating a compass can start to seem like a little ridiculous cerebral exercise. And in some ways, that's exactly what it is. But here's the thing. You aren't meant to, nor are you made to, withstand pain like this with absolutely no tools and absolutely no way to help yourself. The only way to know what is likely to reduce your suffering is by becoming curious about it, mapping the territory. The best list in the world isn't going to actually fix anything. I know. Remember that this is an experiment. Creating a list of things that help and things that make it worse give you a compass. It gives you a tangible point of orientation when the reality of life and loss gets too big for one person to contain. It won't fix anything, and it might help, if even just a little. What we're trying for here, what I hope for you, is that you can find some peace in this for yourself in this moment, that your suffering can be reduced, that you can tend to your pain, come to yourself with kindness, that you can hold your gaze on what is broken without falling into the abyss of suffering that always makes things worse. As you gather data and start to observe what makes things worse, or even slightly less bad, you might see patterns begin to emerge. There are times you feel calmer and times you feel whipped around like a tetherball. One is not more right or more emotionally evolved as the other. One just feels better and the other feels like crap. Sometimes you choose the crap because you don't have it in you to care for yourself. Totally valid. Do what you can. Sometimes the small amount of energy you have, the only thing you can do is heave yourself in the direction of wellness. Heave yourself in the direction of gentleness to self. You don't have to do any more than that. Just turn towards it. Turn toward wellness. That's enough. It counts. And that is chapter 7. It's Okay That You're Not Okay by Megan Devine. Thank you for listening.